Rude boys gonna get you by degrees. Here comes the West Indies. And when you're facing the generals, nearly every ball is a funeral. And when we batting, brother, go and put your men on the boundary line. And if you give we a liquor, that is merely a hiccup. Look, you win the little battle, you lose the war. It's the same result every time. Everybody sing. Here comes the West Indies. Here comes the West Indies. Them rude boys gonna get you by degrees. Here comes the West Indies. I tell you now, here comes the West Indies. Here comes the West Indies. Them bad boys gonna bring you to your knees. Here comes the West Indies. Special request to the Trini posse. And what about the Guyana posse? And what about the Jamaica posse?
Where that you just turn the clock back by about 20 years, 25 years, and your lot absolutely lauded the game. Would you want to give this generation an idea of just what it was like being part of the heyday of Caribbean cricket?
Well, yes, first selected for the West Indies cricket team to go on a tour to New Zealand. I think it was could have been 86, late 86. And it's amazing. I mean, you know, these are having a chance to play with players that you idolized since you were a little boy. I mean, you know, the Richards and the Holding was on that tour. We had Garner. And, you know, you're walking through the airport and people would just stop and stare. You know, that's the West Indies cricket team. You felt like 10 feet tall. You know, you're among all these gods. I mean, something that you dreamed of as a little boy, so you had to actually pinch yourself. So no, it was a fantastic time. You know, there was a lot of passion, a lot of pride, representing some, you know, 6-7 million people from the Caribbean. A very dominant West Indies team, which was dominated from since 75. And then obviously Richards after Lloyd continuing in the same vein. So, you know, powerful cricket nation. I was very proud to be selected and representing a great cricket nation. But obviously since then we've hit on the slippery slope. And, you know, our results in recent past hasn't been one to be very proud of.
That leads me to where I wanted to go. I do want to, through the course of this conversation, chart the course of your career and talk to you about the highs and those times. But I want to talk about the present first. As you said, it's at times a little disappointing seeing the way West Indian cricket might have slid a little over recent years. When you, as a person who represented the West Indian cricket community with such great colors through the 80s and the 90s, when you or people from your time watch the present team as it stands, what is it that you see? What is it that hurts you the most?
Whatever you see now, I have experienced it. Like I was fortunate to play in to start my career in the 80s, as I mentioned, and we were good up until 93. But from 93 to current date,
HP's President's Day sale is on. Find AI PCs, gaming gear, ultra-secure business laptops, printers, and so much more.
we just continue to go downhill. So I know what it feels like. I'm now obviously been retired a long time. I'm not a fan. I'm a fan now watching in, and I've got my opinions. I just think that I suppose as an ex-player, and furthermore, I'll probably go as far as to say the West Indies board have been found totally wanting, really, and we have, well, I suppose the players must take some responsibility for the performances being professional cricketers. I think you really can't look past the West Indies Cricket Board to take the bulk of the game. You know, they're the custodians of the game. And, you know, for the last 15, 20 years, I haven't seen them implement any measures, any real long-lasting measures that will start to arrest this decline. Yes, we've got a professional league, but our wickets in the Caribbean remain some of the poorest around in you know, world cricket. Sabina Park is not what it used to be. The Barbados Kensington Oval is not what it used to be. And as a result, I think you'll always be a product of your environment. And what we see today, basically, is exactly what is happening in the Caribbean. Substandard pitches, cricket not being in the schools, a total breakdown with club cricket, and as a result, I think this is what we see today with the West Indies cricket team. But I think it's hard. You sometimes want to point the fingers at the players. Yes, they can do better always, but I don't think the board has really helped the situation.
Since we are talking about the board, it obviously doesn't help to have the kind of situation that has existed in, say, this last decade, where every year you seem to have some sort of a player versus board tussle. Contract resolutions have taken long. There are signs that there might be a bit of a truce in the offing, but has that been the biggest stumbling block, so to say?
Well, I said in an interview, and I've been saying this for ages now. I mean, not specifically. I'm not going to target the IPL, which I think is wonderful for cricket. The youngsters getting a chance to come to the forefront. But T20 leagues, the whole dynamics of the game, um, the way players move around and play today, it's different. I mean, years ago we used to spend 3.5 months, 4 months in India. Now you come, you spend 6 weeks, you go off, you go on, stuff like that. I mean, so it's sort of different. But furthermore, to my point, um, the issue with the players and the board has been compounded by the fact that T20 cricket is so lucrative now.
How much of that onus is on the players, Mr. Hooper? Because while, yes, these contract issues are important to correct, but it does boil down at some level to an individual choice as well. Is perhaps the amount of money involved with these mushrooming leagues, considering that a Chris Gale can effectively, without donning West Indian colors, travel to at least 6, 7 countries over the course of a year, uh, do very well for himself financially as well as his stature as a global star, and somewhere that eats into players wanting to don the West Indian colors.
Well, good point you make there. I mean, the words of sports being the global star. So the game is changed. The landscape as we know it has changed. It's gone beyond now just being playing for West Indies. He's just as well known here in through the IPL and all the other various T20 leagues. So it's a it's a I think the board has been left behind. I think if we had maybe a little bit foresight, a little bit more vision, we would have seen that this is a threat, and it will continue to be a threat until the board is in a situation where they can, or in a position where they can contract most of their young upcoming players. I mean, there've been so many good players we've lost to the shorter version of the game. Sunil Narayan, Andrew Russell, Karen Pollard. I mean, Sunil Narayan I would have loved to see in this last 2 Test matches. So he would have gone, and he's just also a very good batsman. He can hit the ball too. He can play. Karen Pollard I think has never played a Test match. I mean, who knows what would have happened? Andrew Russell probably would have played a handful. Chris Gale, I think, has cut shortest. I can't tell the last time he played a Test match for the West Indies. And I don't blame the players. You cannot blame the players. But I think at the end of the day, if somebody's going to offer you, hundreds of thousands of dollars to come and play for a couple of weeks, and somebody's going to offer you a contract, 200,000 or maybe half the amount or quarter the amount for the whole year, it's an easy decision.
And there is perhaps a greater irony in the fact that
she's a Hertz Gold Plus Rewards member, so no waiting in line at the counter for her.
That means she's able to pick any car she wants.
while all this has happened through the T20 era of cricket, the West Indians have been the most dominant force as far as T20Is are concerned. The only country to win 2 world titles in the T20 format. Maybe that would have been an area to look upon. Maybe that was an area where the board, of course, I'm sure, regardless of what the viewership data is in the West Indies, which I'm not absolutely certain of, when a country wins a world title, when West Indies won the World T20 in 2012 and in 2016, it surely shot up the interest in the Caribbean islands.
Well, it has, but guess who controls as you know, the CPL T20 League in the Caribbean? It's not the West Indies board. They sold off the rights. So it's just amazing. So here we're talking, you've got a dominant World T20 side, winning it not once, but twice. Furthermore to that, T20 leagues seem to be the vehicle that is stirring the interests of the people, of the certainly younger people. You know, mom's bringing the son through, dad's bringing the son through, gongs are packed, the atmosphere, whatever, whatever. And this is the event that we've managed to sell off to a foreign entity. You know, you would have thought that we would want to, given the location in the Caribbean, beautiful location, beautiful beaches, lovely nightlife, lovely cricket, the atmosphere is electric, full houses. You would think this is something that the West Indies Cricket Board would want to hold on to and run with it. In terms of geography, we're very close to the United States of America. You've got a lot of Indian fans that come down to watch the games. In fact, I think some of the, if I could be wrong, some of the franchises could be owned by by folks who live in the States. So again, and the US is a very, very big market, you know. But what did our board do? We sold it off. You know, so we talk about decisions, is like there's no vision, no long-term vision. Like they just see what's there right now, as opposed to looking down the road and say, okay, this is where we're at. We're trying to get over there. What are the steps, the incremental steps we need to take to get over there?
Is this all that we're discussing right now? Is this on a larger level, on a more global level, also impacting the game overall and not just West Indian cricket? I mean, opinion seems to be a little torn at this point about where cricket is heading as a global sport, or whether it even is a truly global sport in the first place. Where do you stand on that debate?
Well, I think it has affected it to a degree. I mean, don't get me wrong, you still got a lot of great players around, really good test cricketers around. But, you know, I could remember playing against Australian sides, playing against Pakistani sides, Indian sides, played against South Africa a few times. And when you look at this, the team sheet, I mean, you'd have 5 or 6 world-class players. You know, you come to play against India, and you see Virender Sehwag and who else to the top. And then you see Sachin Tendulkar at 3 and VVS Laxman and Surav Ganguly and whoever else want to slot in and so on. And the bowlers, Zahir Khan and Harbhajan and so on. I mean, some of them are world-class players, you know. You go and play against Australia and you see Justin Langer and Matthew Hayden. And then you see, you know, the Steve Waugh and Mark Waugh and Gavin Gilchrist and Shane Warne and Glenn McGrath. I mean, you look at the Australian team today, you know, they've lost 2 key players in Smith and Warner. And you look at it and you've seen some players that you're saying, hey, you know. So as you look around, I suppose, as you look around the world with as far as test cricket, you can see there's obviously a decline. But like everything else, it goes in cycles, you know. It doesn't always stay up there, you know. We're probably going through a little bit of a trough, and then it'll probably, in the next few years, I suppose, go back up. I suppose with the advent of so much T20 cricket too, we're not playing as much test cricket.
Absolutely.
So that also could be a point, you know, that people are not getting a chance to play, you know, for a lot of big 5 test series. Apart from the Ashes, I really don't know of too many other 5 test series that are played.
Would it be fair to say that this is somewhere linked to a lack of dynasties, so to say? The West Indian team that you joined in the late 80s through till the time, till the mid 90s, it was an empire in itself. The Australian team that took over from there was an empire. Here in this part of the world, we look at the Indian team from the 2000s as a golden generation. You don't see those generational empire-esque teams anymore in Test cricket.
And these are formed, I suppose, because almost the names become household names. You know, I mean, I could say from the Caribbean, and if an Indian team is coming, back in the day, we had no television in the Caribbean, but, you know, you can call the Mohinda Amanats and the Gundapa Vishwanaths and they're household name in the Caribbean. And why they became household names? Because they obviously played for India a long time. So you keep hearing the names, and each name has a story. I mean, today, you know, you look at maybe say the T20 cricket. A guy comes in today, has a good season, you know, goes off to another club. You hear about him for a couple of seasons, then he disappears. Another guy comes on. You know, everything is like almost like fast food. You know, while Test cricket, a player will come on the scene, and there's a lot of Test cricket being played, and you hear him by the name, you know, a youngster, and then you slowly start hearing of him building this name. And it's almost like a story. So like when you probably hear about Viv Richards or Richie Richardson, or who, one of our great fast bowlers, Malcolm Marshall, you hear them come and they build this name. They've toured England, India once, they toured it the second time. So the third time it comes here, it's like a household name. You know everybody, you know all the players.
If we do look at the global game, we're talking about the issues, but there are also attempts that are being made at some level across the board. Day-night tests, ping ball cricket, more result-oriented tracks. But when you see all that's being done, considering test cricket's dipping stock value, do you feel enough is being done?
Drinking warm water before bed balances blood sugar levels and reverses type 2.
Oh, welcome, welcome to this evening's edition of West Indies Cricket 101. One of my heroes, Carl Hooper. I remember as a little boy walking up and down Georgetown. I remember 1985, I think it was, yes, youth cricket when Carl Hooper, the West Indies youth cricket, the standard was so high. I remember leaving Buxton as a young man and walking up and down Georgetown. I remember Kenny Benjamin in that youth series and some of the other great players walk behind Carl Hooper. Certainly one of the gems of the game. I think the game has to be analyzed certainly against those who dominated with statistics. But I think the balance has to be made between statistics and what one brought to the poetry of the game, the integrity of the game. And, the older men, when they saw Carl Hooper, they say, he's a ballet dancer. They talk about Frank Worrell. Anyway, they have Jeffrey Stallmeyer, but they said Frank Worrell and Lawrence Rowe and Carl Hooper. Poetry in motion, ballet dancer, and so on. Certainly one of the great cricketers of all time. And I had the pleasure, Basil and I, first time I met Basil Butcher Jr., of talking to Carl or listening to him. Victor Benjamin was there at Ivlery. There was a practice match. He had just come back out of retirement. And that conversation went on for about 3-4 hours. And I stood there and lapped it all in. Very intelligent chap. Very, very intelligent chap. And giving his perspective on cricket in the West Indies and cricket in the world. Let me bring in Basil, because I know Basil rub shoulders with these chaps more than I can ever begin to do. Basil?
Yes. Good evening, Dr. Hinds. Good evening to your viewers. Yes, I remember that it was a Saturday. It was a Saturday or a Sunday, or it's one of those. It was a weekend day.
It was a weekend day. It was a Saturday.
Yeah.
It was a Saturday.
Yes. That was 2003, if I'm not mistaken. Why I know the year well is because my dad was asked to come out of retirement, if you will, to come and run for the Guyana Cricket Board president. And if you remember, I had to leave y'all because I promised him I would go with him to Perica, where he was going to canvass, speaking to some officials from the Essequibo Cricket Board, giving out his manifesto, his plans, etc. So I was very upset I made that promise because the gap was so sweet.
I remember you leaving. I still have the newspaper caption here appeared in the newspaper the next day.
Right on.
Yeah, I still have it here, and
okay.
Yeah. My wife at that time laminated it, and and I walk with this wherever I go. Whenever I move, this is one of the first things I carry with me. Some of the thoughts there. I mean, Carl was expressing.
What year did Hoops do this interview?
It was this year. This was done in 2010 or thereabout. It was about 10 years ago.
No, that's interesting. We're now 15 years onward, and that interview, what he was saying, could have been said yesterday.
Yes.
The needle has not been moved in terms of West Indies cricket development. There's a lot of fancy bells and whistles that these guys have been saying, and Hooper pointed out a very important aspect that has never been addressed by West Indies Cricket Board and its affiliates, the territorial boards, club and school cricket. We know, like, from a Guyana perspective, there is no school cricket in Guyana. I see school cricket played in some other parts of the Caribbean, actually.
Barbados.
No, well, I know a guy who streams. He would stream school cricket in Jamaica, and you see the standard is nowhere. What it you know what I mean? Barbados, they still continue to have a very school cricket competition, both at primary and secondary school. Several of the secondary schools play in the BCA wide tournament in second division, etc., and so on. They still have, Barbados still has a lot of the structures of the halcyon days, but they're not producing players of world class. Barbados still produce the most players, because if you look in the regional tournament and you look over the landscape across teams, you would see a lot of Barbadian players playing elsewhere outside of Barbados. They're more than any other territory in the region, and that's because of their structure. But what is missing? None of them are world-class players or elite players. That's the problem. We used to develop players, and when they got to the elite level, they were able to more than hold their own and to show that they belong here and they were high-level performers. That's not what we're producing anymore.
And what's the missing link? I mean, if in Jamaica and Barbados, you have the architecture, the infrastructure that you had in the old days. But in the old days, you were producing volume and quality. Today, you're producing, as you're saying, and I agree with you, you're producing volume but not quality. What's the missing link?
There are a couple of things, because that's where it's important that you drill down and look at what brought us success, and also what brought us success, and what was the environment, one, within the context of those countries, as well as the larger international landscape. A couple of things. In the days of the halcyon days, let's look at the foundation. Club cricket. National players, international players would be playing in club cricket on a regular basis. Even guys who had recently retired from international cricket would still play club cricket for a few years after they retired from international cricket and so on. Those things rarely happen today, right? That was a fixture. You go throughout the region, you would always hear guys who came up in those eras talk about the veterans of the past, players and so on, were mentors for them and so on as they were coming through. That is no longer much of a facet in the West Indies cricket ecosystem. School cricket, is very spotty throughout the region, and where, for the most part, where it's played, it's not of any standard, right? So where where we might have been able to attract more young people, even athletic young people, to get into the game in school, where you would introduce it to them in PE and so on and so forth. Now we have these things where clubs around, like say in Guyana, Georgetown, these guys have camps in the summers at different clubs to bring in these youngsters to get introduced to the game and so on and so forth. That is cool, but I would much prefer to see these youngsters at a younger age being introduced to the game and getting exposed earlier to all of the things about cricket, and most particularly West Indies cricket. So because of that, the standard of the cricket from ground up is way below what it used to be. So guys are able to go up the ladder despite having many flaws or many deficiencies in their game, and could get all the way to an international team that in the past they would have been found wanting somewhere along the pathway, and if they didn't buck up, they was not progressing along the pathway. And so that's it in a nutshell. And the thing is, no, you look at the environment today, and you know, and I know, Guyana, let's talk of Guyana, for example. It's the same country we grew up in. However, the society is not the same society we grew up in. The overarching values of the society myself and you grew up in is no longer the same overarching values in Guyana. That not just affects also the young people coming out of that environment, right? That's one thing you got to take into consideration. And also part of the environment, by you do not have the players of the past and so on infused in the system, it means then who replaces them? The coaches. That means you got to have really good coaches to mentor these young people as they traverse through the cricket pathway. That, in my view, is something that is very wanted in the Caribbean when it comes to our the coaches that are dealing with these players, right? Because the players today are more exposed to coaching than any other generation. But what are we seeing? We're not seeing them. And then obviously, you know, things like facilities and all of those things play a role play a serious role in the development of our players. But we have to remember something: we are not Australia, India, South Africa, and all those places that have more resources. So we have to be creative and be able to use our resources in terms of facilities and how we can maximize that so our players can get exposed to all the various things they need to be exposed to as they develop as players.
And good evening to all of you who are joining us. Of course, this is West Indies Cricket 101 on a Sunday evening. I'm here with Basil Butcher Jr. Dr. Adams has the evening off. He is in transit from a party in the snow down to the south. He was there at a Rickford Bucks party last night in the snow. And he's traveling back to the south. So he's not here with us this evening. Welcome to the Honorable Nima Flubes, the Shadow Minister of Sport. And, you know, if you're the Shadow Minister of Sport, you are the Minister of Sport in the waiting. And it's good to see her here in the program. I had a chance to listen to our presentation in Parliament, which I found quite interesting. And she's here, and as you see her comment there. Basil, it's interesting that, as you said, back in the day, we didn't talk much about the role of the government. Although I'm sure the government was involved. It was the board, but the government was there. Every now and again, you hear like when Burnham brought back Live Lloyd.
Mm-hmm.
You would hear that. Or when Burnham said that Sobers, you can't come and play because you were right? Every now and again you would hear the government.
Over government involvement.
Over government involvement. But there is a growing view today that the government needs to be more involved because the board is just not doing it. And that the government really, because there's the argument that the board, you heard Upa there in the board, and all the ex-players talk about the board. And then there's this call now for the government. The dilemma for us is that, in my view, is that the way our boards are behaving really is the way our more extreme and authoritarian governments have behaved in the region. And so I'm wondering whether we're not jumping from the fire pan into the fire. But when you take, I'm going to come in a minute, when you take a place like Guyana, flush with money.
Yes.
All right, and the West Indies board is complaining that it doesn't have money. Guyana got enough money to finance the West Indies board. And they don't have to depend on the ICC. All right? So we're in a dilemma. And I don't know sometimes which way to turn my head. But over to you.
Look, there are a couple things I could think of right off the top of my head. Let's look at Guyana, because that's where we know more about, right? Clubs are struggling mightily in Guyana, right, to make it maintain, etc. You hear people telling me in Georgetown, for example, when they want to have their 2-day fixtures, a club or a ground, they're struggling to get a ground for 2 days, 2 consecutive days, because the clubs have to maintain themselves. They have to rent out their facility to make money to maintain themselves. So they're hard pressed to have 2 weekend days, because obviously weekends is when more activities would be going on, right? So that is in one area where I think the government could come in and play a role in subsidizing these clubs, so that during cricket season, for example, they would not have to be doing that, right? They can do that off season, but not during cricket season. So grounds would be available. That's one. And also in subsidizing them, you'll help them to be able to have the kind of personnel that they would need around these players, such as fitness, nutrition, proper skill coaching, and so on, around these clubs, that the players will be exposed to a high performance environment from the bottom up. And I've said this, look, let's use Georgetown as an example, and you could use this model in Berbice and etc. So we got X number of clubs in Georgetown. All of the clubs then would have access to maybe they hire some kind of strength and conditioning people that they're going to come to each club and give them a program. So the players with the fitness. Similarly, you will have a nutritionist, maybe a sports psychologist, if you will, and people of those ilks that can be called upon by different clubs as needed. This would be subsidized, right? And obviously skill coaching, part of the subsidy, helping to pay, because you can't get nobody coach free. The free thing, them days over, right? And then also on top of that, there needs to be, I made a statement that every club that has at least a first division team should have an analyst kit, because our players need to be introduced from that level, how to practice, being able to see video of themselves, how to correct, and so on at that level. Not until when they get to the regional level, which is one level above the international level, they're now exposed to that kind of thing. Whereas around the world, under 13 start seeing these things. So they're learning about tactical things and so on from 13 years old and so on. So our players are way behind the 8 ball when they're going to go up in terms of preparation against their colleagues around the world. And you might be more talented or just as talented, but if you're not as prepared and understand your game and your tactical acumen and all those things are not in place, that team, despite you're on the same level talent-wise, will beat you 8 or 9 out of 10 times.
Basil Berto Jr. here on West Indies Cricket 101. Good evening to all of you. Good evening to you, Ashley, out of London. Good night. Good night to you. Good evening. Good night to you. Good evening to you, Kirk. Basil, you know, as I ponder the role that governments inevitably, I think, will have to play if we are going to deal with the financial problem that we certainly have. My fear is, and you're from Guyana, I'm from Guyana, is that I'm sure that our government doesn't mind spending the money, but there is the political attachment, the partisan political attachment that comes with it. That, you know, I would say I don't want to go down that road. You know, whatever you want to say about Burnham, he would bring back Lloyd, but he wouldn't try to control the Guyana Cricket Board of Control.
No.
All right? No. He was far away from that. I don't think...
And just to say this, the funny thing is, Burnham was actually approached by the Guyana Cricket Board regarding Lloyd's situation.
Yes.
And he facilitated it for them. So the board felt confident they could go to the Prime Minister and he would see fit to facilitate
without asking for something.
Of course. I think this is where now professionalism comes into play. Now the question, you sit down with the government people and you have to be able to talk to them. Obviously they have their political leanings or whatever. But one of the things, you as a professional, you have to sit down to them, map out the plan to them in a professional manner and say, this is how we have to do it. If we do it somewhere else, that's not the result we're going to get. I remember when I was going through coaching training, a high-level cricket coaching training, I did the Australian highest level. The guy said to us, you might find yourself because we train, I could be trained to be a technical director for a country or whatever in case may be, which means I have to interface with people who are not on my technical level of understanding what needs to be done. They have in their minds, oh, we just got to do X, Y, Z. But now you got to now come to them and really map out to them step by step what has to be done to get players to come up. What Benji is saying here, Benji is talking a bundle of nonsense as usual. But I want to get into that. What clubs always come with their own money? Subs today could run a club today. Are you kidding me? You know what I mean? These clubs are not even trained in the thing of marketing and all of those things you're asking them to do. So Benji, rest yourself.
but the game has gotten much more expensive
exactly.
now.
Look. Right here in the United States, we little club cricket. I remember the days when I started playing cricket here 40 odd years ago. How we little subs and so on was what made us through the season. Firstly, tell a youngster today about subs. They don't even know about subscription. That's not even part of their reality. All they're concerned about is to turn up on Sunday and play cricket. Where the money coming from, they ain't got concerned about it. You're holding events for the club. If you get a club night, enough of them don't even turn up to the club night. So I don't know what Benji like he living in
Benji, you remember this picture, boy?
Benji was holding court.
Benji was on. The caption is Carl Hooper. catches up with former Guyana Defence Force cricketer Victor Benjamin at right at the police force club yesterday. The overseas-based Benjamin was also the physical fitness trainer at the national cricket for the national cricket team. Benji, a little bit history. Don't worry about it.
No. Benji is disappointing for him to talk about what he talking about. It's not apropos today. Again, that's what I'm talking about. Looking at the environment we're dealing with. This is not back in my day. Today is 2025. The mindset of people 2025, the players, and so on and so forth. I've been around club cricket for the last 40 years, and I have seen this thing continue. Here, another thing. A lot of these young players today have no full understanding of what club life used to be of past generations. They don't understand the loyalty to club life and all of those things. That, pay a subscription. Now again, if you pay a little $5,000 a year, you must gotta get 1 million members for that $5,000 to be able to fund your program. Look, I have been told in Georgetown, for example, if a club has a first division and a second division game scheduled on the same weekend, they only can play one game because they can't find players for two teams. So if you're struggling to find players for two teams, where is this money coming from that environment to be able to manage the club, right?
Yeah. Mike is making the point here with the oil wealth. I think Guyana government can support professional sports league rather than pouring lots of money into the global super league. A lot of the sports clubs are bankrupt.
Exactly. And you know something too, Dr. Hinds. I've read and heard about the Minister of Education and people of that ilk talking about they're gonna be putting in the curriculum. Children gotta do physical, PE, play, and so on, because Dr. Hinds, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. Somebody taking 20 subjects. I still cannot wrap my head around 20 subjects. When I was going to school, you take 8, that was plenty.
Plenty.
That was plenty if you take 8. I take 6. Right?
I took 5. I took 5.
5 used to be the thing.
And partly, not only were your head could take, but that's what my parents could afford.
Right. Yes.
In terms of the books and all that kind of stuff and all that thing.
That's very true. That's very true. Because I remember my aunt in England, my parents, because I know GC is the same, just like the thing. Yeah. My aunt in England sent down some books because I did the 3 sciences, physics, chemistry, and biology. And she sent me some books that was the appendix to the thing. Even my biology teacher used to always say, Butcher, let me use your book when he teaching. Because my book had everything, you know what I'm saying? So so youngsters are not even, if you're gonna do all those subjects, how are you gonna get into physical, playing sport and all of those things? So we gotta get more rounded in youngsters to play the cricket and play the football. And look, most of us, like I am a little younger than you. When we went to school, we had the option of playing any sport you could think about in school. No, that is not the reality today.
No.
It is not the reality.
When they introduced the multilateral schools, we were playing badminton.
Yes.
The girls were playing netball.
Because my father was on board with FOBs and this multi thing.
Yes.
Right? And the year multi started, I was in the first class. But as usual, what happened during the Burnham years, a lot of great ideas, but the implementation was the problem. That is what happened with the multi. And after a year and a half, my father said, out of there, because we ain't getting with books, we ain't getting this, we ain't getting that. And this great experiment, it never panned out as we expected it to be.
Good evening to those of you who are joining us a little bit late. Yes, it's West Indies Cricket 101. Basil Butcher, young Basil Butcher, or little Basil Butcher, as usual. I don't like the Basil Butcher Jr. thing and so on.
Yeah.
But because Basil is a man in his own right. You heard the man say.
It's a funny story, right? My mom told me, because you know, when I must have been very, very young. This before I know myself really. People might call me Junior, and Lance Gibbs tells she don't call her by Junior because you got the name gonna left funny. And then I saw when my mother told me that when I saw Lance Gibbs, I said, Mr. Gibbs, thank you very much. I would have hated to be called that's me named Junior. I used to know when my mother called me, she used a different tone when she called me.
When she called you, man.
I could tell when it was her father when she called me.
the reason I laugh, you know, is part of my study and teaching of Caribbean culture.
Yeah.
No, and that is so instructive.
Culture. Yeah.
Different tone in calling. Yes.
Exactly. I like you, Dr. Hinds, because as I told you, I studied under Marimba Annie. So, so she's a cultural anthropologist, and
yes,
African culture is what that is. Who is the person that grounded me into African culture? And when a lot of things when I started studying under her, and I relate back to how we would do things as African people, and so, and then I started to realize where it came from. You know, and even a simple thing like how my mother would call me and my father, we got the same name, but a different tone that we each knew when she was calling out to us. That's an African thing.
Oh, where is CLR James beyond the boundary? You know, linking cricket. And Basil, you started out earlier by saying that, you know, the cricketers we produce, they come from our society. They come from our country. They don't drop from the sky.
Yeah.
And in many regards, we're expecting our cricketers to be different from the way they were socialized.
Correct.
You know, and you're never going to do that. You know, and you made a point, Basil. Last night I was in my little statistic thing, and I was looking through Pakistan thing, and you remember Asad Shafiq, and you had another one. There were two of them. You don't remember them very much because they were playing with Inzama, Ulak, and the other stars. And I said, these chaps just retired quietly. One of them got about 6,000 runs, and another one got about 4,000 runs.
Yeah.
So I said, go and see what these chaps doing. You know, both of them playing first-class cricket in Pakistan.
A lot of them. Look. Let me tell you something. That's the difference in a lot of the subcontinent players that have played international cricket, and you go and see their domestic cricket, you still see them playing.
Yeah, I was stunned.
Yeah,
I was stunned. And making runs, you know.
Yeah,
making runs.
I saw 2023. We call him Muhammad Hafiz, the professor. There was a Masters tournament in Florida. I was working with one of the teams as the physio, and we went. Well, we team get knocked out, so I gone and I watching the semis and the finals, and he was batting like he could play first class again and still make runs, because one of the things, if you remember, he prided himself on his conditioning. He was always a highly conditioned. That's why he played into his 40s, could play for Pakistan into his 40s. Same, Misma Ul Haq was playing in the same tournament. You know? And the fit, the conditioning, you know, them men belly flat as a pancake and so on. You know, when you see them running around in the field, they are looking like some old man, right? So they could still play the domestic cricket. And unlike us, the players in subcontinent have a reverence for the past players, unlike our players today, right? So they would be in such awe to know that one of their former players is playing with them, or even come to them with advice and so on and so forth. that is something that got, in my view, got taken out of our cricket culture by the people who started to be in charge of cricket in the Caribbean that were not of cricket background. They loved the game, but they were not of cricket background, and because they probably felt somewhat inferior to these former players because they couldn't talk about the game on the level with these guys. So they would only keep the ones around who would be soup drinkers, not the ones who would tell them you're doing nonsense.
Right.
You know, and you saw that link of a former player and a current youngster got severed immensely. That today, young players feel like, and that's a reflection of the society again. If, say, Andy Roberts makes some statements about a current player, they take it personal and he is criticizing them, etc.
Right.
But if they took the time to know who is Andy Roberts, you would understand. Andy Roberts will tell you his way of communicating is not the one would say the textbook way, but his meaning is well. He is doing that because he wants the best from you. So if you know him, if you are interacting with him, you will know when he say that he is not saying that to in a way to knock you down. Is a way to help you to get better. This is a guy that wears West Indies cricket on his short sleeves, you know.
He said he sleeps cricket, he eats cricket, and he dreams cricket. Yes. I was talking about Azhar Ali, and who played between 2010.
Oh yes, Azhar Ali recently retired. He was a guy, you remember, he was a guy that did the triple century in Australia.
The triple century 302
in 2016 in Dubai.
Yes,
right,
right. And he made 7,000, and the other one was Azad Shafiq. And they were playing with Yunus Khan and Inzamon and so on. So
exactly.
They were always the kind of bridesmaids and so on. But they're still playing domestic cricket and making runs.
Yep.
You see?
It's reminiscent. That's reminiscent of when people like my father and Seymour Norris and all those guys retired. They still was playing domestic cricket.
Yeah. It was so good to see Sir Clive Lloyd at the cricket ground. He
has been there on several days because I heard him in commentary. He was doing some long stints.
Yes.
And you know the big skipper will always give you a lot of good information.
Yes. Here's hoping. Look, even if Clive Lloyd was doing nothing, just being there at that ground, I think it makes a difference. But the young cricketers will walk past him.
I mean, again, that is a part of the unfortunate thing, because for a lot of the young players, Clive Lloyd is simply a name.
Yes.
Clive Lloyd doesn't hold the reverence that he should hold in their hearts and minds, and that is also a failure of West Indies cricket as an entity. Again, we're talking about the environment. We grew up in an environment, we didn't have TV, but we knew all the players for the West Indies. We read the papers, we saw the pictures and so on. Now, if we see them on the street, we know who so-and-so is, right? Even though we never see them play, right? I never seen Clyde Walker play, I never seen Everton Weeks play, but when I saw them, I knew who they were.
That's it.
Right?
That's
you know what I mean? So that is part of the failure. Now, in our environment growing up, that it was like osmosis for us to learn about those things. The environment today, no. So who has to take up the bulk to do it? It is important now the cricket structure inculcate into these young players from the start. When they come in, you inculcate to them about whose shoulders they stand upon, what West Indies cricket is about, etc. Whereas our youngsters from other parts of the world, like for example, my friend Lyndon Fraser always takes down a team down to Ghana, youngsters from United States. Most of them are of South Asian background. But them youngsters gonna Google, and every time they go down, they want to go and visit Border. because of the history of
The
boredom.
history, yes.
And then
yes.
when they go up and they see some of their players on the wall there score 100 and so on, they're taking a picture of the thing and so on. You think our young players got time with something like that? No, unfortunately. I remember I met Langer, Justin Langer, back in 1995. He was a youngster. He just started playing Test cricket. I remember his 93 series when he made his debut with Bishop. Them nearly killed you. Right? And Viv, that was when Viv and Botham was in Australia doing some tour. And Viv criticized Border. Oh, you're going to send the youngster to the firing line and send him to bat 3. You batting down at 5 and you send him to bat 3, right? So I met him in Antigua when I went to see the test match in 95. I introduced myself. You know, Langer knew who my father was.
There you go.
And I saw my father go in West Indies dressing room. And Roger Harper was the coach. And Roger had to introduce who he was to the players.
Yeah.
You know, Langer knew who my father was, and then I was teasing him about. He said, "Yeah, that was some serious chin music that he got from Bishop and so on." But yeah, I mean, those little things, Dr. Hinds, have eroded, and all are part and parcel of the demise of West Indies cricket. It's not just simply what we're doing on the field; it's all those things that added up to make our players develop and go to what they would be. That we have turned a blind eye. I remember as far back, it might be in the mid-90s, I think, where every time I would go home, I followed DCC because one of my friends took me to DCC in the early 90s, and that became a club. And then I remember there was a guy, a youngster named Christian. I remember 1 year I go back and
Darwin Christian.
That's right. Them guys tell me, Butch, we got a bad man, a young bad man batsman named Christian. And every time I go home and they play First Division, I said, is Christian playing? No, man, Butch, he in Trinidad playing cup cricket. Playing Trinidad, playing cup cricket. You know, the first time I can finally see Christian play is when I think they stream a game we play for Guyana or something like that. I can finally see Christian play. No, Christian are using him as an example.
Right.
But this was something going on. A lot of the club teams a lot of the top players, several of the players were in Trinidad playing the trade in the 90s. They were getting paid, right? So as a result, Trinidad club cricket was getting pushed up. Whereas places where these players were coming from, because not only Ghana they were coming from, they were coming from other parts of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
So that you had the demise of the club cricket because you would go and watch a game, a bunch of guys playing First Division who ordinarily would never be in the First Division team, but because players absent, they have to play. And it's not like in the days where guys who were playing in England and they were still playing in England, the club season start, where you had adequate, hungry youngsters who were good players that got now a chance to get exposed playing First Division. And I remember Chetram Singh was the president of the Guyana board at the time, and he talked about this problem, and he said, "I understand it is something we have to address," but I would tell you, it's never been addressed.
Never been addressed. Nicolette is saying here, oh boy, once the great Gary Sobers went up to a young West Indies player.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Oh, Lord. Oh my goodness.
I heard about that. You know?
Yeah. Oh my God. I would do anything just to be in the same room with Gary Sobers.
I mean, look,
anything.
Look, I'm not going to call the player's name because for obvious reasons, but Sir Randy Roberts wanted to talk to a certain player, and he was able to get his information, reached out to him. You know, he loved to talk to him and so on. Player said, yeah, when I get into, I'll give you a call. He didn't give him a call. And then he ran into him because the player was coming to Antigua, and he ran into him. And the player goes, "Oh, shoots, I forgot." I telling another friend of mine who was a fast bowler in his days. he tell me, what? Andy Roberts called me. I would be sleepless all night knowing tomorrow I get him from meet Andy Roberts. You know what I mean? So, because again, for that player, he don't really know who Andy Roberts is.
No.
Andy Roberts is just a name. It's just like, same Sir Andy told me a story when he was playing county cricket. What's the guy named the fast bowler from England in the 60s? I can't how I missing the name. The one who gives breaky record.
Freddie Truman.
Truman, yes, Fred Truman. Fred Truman made a comment about his bowling technique.
Uh-huh.
And Andy Roberts telling me he went in the nets for hours and hours to correct it. And you know why he did that? Because it's who made the critical
Truman.
Because the man, Truman said, if Andy Roberts could do X, he would become a great bowler. And because it was Truman who said it, he said he went in the nets and he said it took him hours to get this thing like it is. As Truman described what he needed to do to improve his action, you know. But just like the story this person is putting there, Nicola Francis.
Yeah, I saw Andy Roberts supervising the pitch at ARG when I was there. Yeah. And I asked Andrew Seeley, who was then on the cricket board, can you take me across to talk to Andy Roberts?
Yeah.
He said, Dr. Hinds, he's a normal chap. Just go across and introduce yourself. I said, no, man, you.
Of course.
I'm frightened to walk up and
no.
The great Andy Roberts.
Yes, of course.
Eventually, I made my way over there and so on. And Andrew Seeley said,
right?
Yeah, Andrew Seeley said, well, this is Dr. David Hinds on thing. And he said, well, drop the doctor. And I was able to chat with him about pitch preparation, fast bowling. It wasn't the selfie days.
Yeah, we didn't phone them things.
We didn't have the phone.
I know the time you're talking about because I went a couple times to Antigua to see Test cricket when he was the man overlooking preparation. But yeah, I told him too. I remember because he is my favorite fast bowler. I have a temper Marshall and so on. Roberts is my favorite fast bowler here. I grew up wanted to be like Roberts, but then I realized quickly I'm not a fast bowler. So let me just think with my batting, right? And I remember vividly in '78 when they came to play Leewards came to play Guyana. That's he and Viv come back from
yes,
where Viv hit Croft straight back past him, no, then before, and the whole border went wild. And after the game, we stand and I see Andy Roberts sitting in the bus at the window. I know he had the beard and he had a real serious face. I tell you, I could even remember what jersey he was wearing. I described the jersey. I said, I want to go to you because I autograph. But I said, you serious face? I said, no.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he laughed. He said, and I am one of the most down, and I can tell you that. Because me and him talk regularly. He is one of the most down-to-earth person you could ever come wrong. The great Andy Rob, you think, you know what I mean? Down-to-earth as they come. You know, but
I went to that match.
Because the statue we hold them.
Yes. I went to that match to see Viv and Andy and to see Farrod Bacchus. And Andy spoiled my day because they split Farrod Bacchus early.
Oh yeah, Bacchus. I was run down the wicket. I don't know what.
Running down the wicket to Andy Roberts.
To Andy Roberts? Are you crazy? You know, Dr. Hinds. Dr. Hinds, that game, me and my brothers, we was in Flagstaff watching. And I remember, a guy, but he make a 120 something or 130. And the two openers, Vance Marie and Michael Camacho, put out thing. And the crowd getting restless. Because, you know, remember border was packed.
Yes.
We go see Master Blaster. Because the time he was the Master Blaster, just come back from the Forest Packer season and dominate, right? And by the crowd getting restless and finally Vance Marie out. And I never forget where Viv walked down the stairs, the whole border stand up. The whole border stand. I can still remember Yana the Kerry Packer fire engine cap as he walking out with the jumbo, dragging the jumbo as he walking out. And I remember Indian guy inside Flagstaff, Harry, me drink one shot for every rash run he make. That time he made 15. I remember the same Indian guy. When you know you gotta go down the stairs, Flagstaff, they want to help you now, guy, he drunk. Here, let me tell you, I got to meet Viv. I met him after the match. We were all standing between ladies pavilion and the main pavilion, and he was coming out, and he come over to we and commiserate. It was about 5 or 6 of we, and then the liaison man said, Viv, we gotta go. He said, okay, fellas, I gotta go now, you know. He was signing autographs and thing. I go to Antigua. I was in Antigua, it was 96. And the late Colin Cumberbatch, who just passed, Bones, and King I, you know. King I
yes. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Ras King I,
yes.
Yes, well, he's the late Ras King I to know. The three of we was sitting down in the lobby, right? Me and Bones was good friend. We sitting down in the lobby, and Viv walk in the hotel. Boy, I would turn like a little boy. I said, Bones, you gotta carry the big bag for come over here. I got for me the big dog money. Hey, Bones, don't worry, boss, don't worry. He gonna come over. And you know, the big Viv, he gotta make commiserations around. And then Viv, as he get to drink at the bar, and he walk over to when he see the tree. He said, what go on here? A Rastaman convention, we call it right? And then Bones said, this is Basil Butcher, son. I said, Viv, and just the other day, I ran into him. He was here at Lawrence Road thing in Florida last year, January. And I said to Viv, the 15 you make in Guyana is the best 15 when you play. Here, I was talking today, and I said the best shot I've ever seen out of Colin Croft was and Fawad Bacchus was in our company, and Fawad ended the sentence to me. He said, you mean the shot or the Viv shot, the push? I said, yes, the push. You remember that one, Dr. Hyde?
Yeah.
And that was the days when Kraft used to kick off from the bungee board, you know what I mean? Yes.
Yeah, we'll be reminiscing here. And I know this is the part of the program that a lot of people said, don't do that. I met Viv for the first time in person. Both of us were going through immigration in Antigua. You know, Antigua immigration is a little thing.
Yes.
And he was in front of me. And I said, Vivian Richards? And he looked wrong. And we held up the line, you know, because we started, and he started to chat with me. And nobody hurried up and said we holding up the line or anything. And he talked to me for good 4 or 5 minutes and so on. Basil, you always say that when you are a test cricketer and you come back to the local competition, you must dominate. You must dominate. This wrong day must have pleased your heart.
Oh yes, Mr. Imlach coming and made, and not only that, what I most enjoy about Mr. Imlach's innings is the situation that he came into and made that 100 leading from the front. And also what he did in the second innings. If you noted, he batted at 5 in the first innings.
Yes.
And he came and he took the mantle again to lead from in front again. So I admire that greatly about young Imlach. I think also Brathwaite did what he's normally do. And I'm gonna tell you something, Dr. Hinds. I've watched all the 3 innings that John Campbell has played.
Yes, I was coming to John Campbell, yes.
Right?
Go ahead.
The 3 innings. He's past 50 in all of them.
Yes.
100. John Campbell has dominated the bowling in all of those innings. You could see the thing you like to say, he's a cut above the rest. You could see clearly he's a cut above the rest. He was toying with some bowling when he threw a wicket in the first match. Right? I watch all of his innings because I got a lot of interest in John Campbell. Because in my view, I would love for John Campbell to be back at opening West Indies cricket because I feel he complements Brathwaite very well. And John Campbell is a player that has that ability. Let me just note, I said ability to turn the pressure back onto a bowling attack that Louis right now does not have that.
No.
Chandapal don't have that. And we need a guy up top that could put pressure back on. Look, I mean, I'm not saying he's this, but just to give a context, that's what Dave Warner used to do. That I will tell you something, Khawaja misses Warner for that. Because Warner took a lot of pressure off of Khawaja could stay in his shell and just knock it around, hit the fours and so on, because Warner was taking the pressure off him on the other side. Right? And that's what a Campbell could bring to our opening pair. And I hope he continues because the guy just looks like he in a different level.
Yeah.
And it's amazing for a guy who had been away from the game for a couple of years that to come right back in and taking the bowling apart. It is a wonderful thing to see.
Kevin Hodge hit 100 too.
Yes, 126 out of 166. That was a phenomenal inning. Well done to Hodge.
Django hit a 90 something.
Django, yes. Jason Mohammed. What the old time term we would say the evergreen Jason Mohammed has a back-to-back hundreds. You know,
right.
You know, somebody making a joke. You think they're gonna pick Jason Mohammed. You know, but one thing we it is heartening to see. But what's interesting, a little thing to let people know. In the first couple of rounds, they're using a kookaburra ball.
Oh.
Right? A kookaburra ball doesn't do as much as the Dukes. Right? And if you remember, if you had followed England cricket this past season, England has instituted the same thing because they wanted their bowler to develop more skills. Right? So as a result, you saw a lot of batsmen making a lot of runs in county cricket in the early part of county cricket. There was you know the part where the place wet and damp, you know, them doubly men would run up with a Duke's ball and doing magic. So they said, no. Those kind of guys, firstly, are not gonna play test cricket. The only place, if they do play, is in England. You can't walk with them guys to Australia, to the West Indies, and India and so on, because that bowling, they can't replicate that elsewhere, right? So they wanted fast bowlers and guys to develop the skills. And then as the place gets warmer, they go back to the Duke ball because they play test cricket with the Duke ball. And that's the same thing they're going to be doing in Carmen. So it'll be interesting to see when the bowlers get a hold of the Duke ball, if these guys can still be as effective batters as they have been showing with the kookaburra.
Warrican shows that it was not a fluke. He picked up an 8.
Warrican, no, what Warrican is showing to us, he has really matured as a bowler. He understands what his plan is, what he has to do, understands his skill set, how to apply it in all the given situations. You could see he really understands his game, right? And unfortunately, our boy, Mr. Moti, better watch himself. Guy, you see Mr. Carrie Pierre, what he just do is...
That's right. I was coming to Carrie Pierre.
Yes.
21 wickets already.
Exactly. Here, man. You know our friend, the great Philip Spooner, the media man from...
Yes, the media man. Yes.
Spooner put in, we chat, you know, but it's hyperbole. Based on stats, even bypass, we buy the left-hander from Jamaica, Valentine. I said, Mr. Spooner, here we it's all tongue in cheek, but I said, okay. Valentine is the gold standard when it comes to left-hand spinners out of the West Indies. He's the gold standard, right? And if Valentine catch them batters when we got here today, because from all reports I've heard about Valentine, not only the guy used to bowl fast but and spin the ball.
Spin the ball,
So
that's
you,
what I heard.
you get a combination of bowling the ball and spinning it. My.
Yes, I heard he used to spin that ball. I heard
Turn the ball big.
I asked, because they tell me Lance Gibbs used to spin the ball till his fingers used to.
Yeah. Lance Gibbs. Me over tell me about how they all them used to take turns and filing down the corn and the fingers from all the overs. They all used to take, because you gotta get feeling in the finger, and it can't go there, you can't feel it. So
Right.
they would file it down, you know.
Yeah, I asked Lance Gibbs about Valentine. He said, "Oh Lord, out of this body." He said he spun it.
Yeah, I remember my dad telling me he was talking about Worrell, and he said when they got to England in '63, and you know, in those days, unless you did something in England, you were not recognized as a top player. And he said to the team, "We only have two superstars on this team, myself and Valentine."
Yes.
Right? Because only the two of us have done the business here in England. The rest of y'all haven't done nothing here in England. And that team included Sobers, who had already broken the world record, Kanai, who made separate 100 in Australia, Gibbs, who had a hat trick in Australia, etc. Right? And, you know, kind of like to get these guys to understand, you know, what y'all have to do. If you want to make your mark, this is what you have to do. And then he even told them, another thing he told them, that when you walk out on the field to play, you're not only playing for the team and the folks back home, you're also playing for all them black people here in England. That when we win, they walk into work with the chest puff up. If we lose, they could get knocked off the work. And that too, Dr. Hinds, is also one of the changes in our society. That political understanding that our cricketers had from in the time of the colonial period, and understand themselves as Caribbean people and what they were representing, that society is no longer there for those youngsters to have that consciousness of what that represented. It was in the face of those past generations, right? So they want to beat the colonial master. You tell a youngster, I don't even know that. What are you talking about? You know, so I mean, all of those things. That's why I don't have to tell you this. That is why knowing your history is fundamental. It is fundamental.
Nicolette, you know, it's one of the things that pains me. For example, this semester I'm teaching a course, Peoples and Cultures of the Caribbean, and I, you know, do popular music, reggae, calypso. I teach a module on cricket, so I spent about 3 to 4 weeks on cricket and teaching the cricket over the years. After that class, a young white kid brought me a T-shirt with Gary Sober's picture on it. He had never heard of cricket before.
Right.
He's learning cricket in my class, right? And he learns about Sobers, and he went and he did his research.
Right.
And he on behalf of the class, he said, "Professor Hinds, you know, I'm presenting you." I still have that T-shirt.
Right.
Years ago. But he said, "I have never known that there was a game so scientific." Said, you know, and it pains me because I'm teaching young, mostly white kids, Hispanic kids, some African Americans, and I'm teaching them something that I would love to teach Caribbean
people, right? Youngsters, Caribbean youngsters. Yes.
One of my students, after that course, went and joined the Peace Corps and went to Grenada. I mean, these are the experience you have of teaching non-Caribbean people about this place called the Caribbean and about cricket and so on. And you watch our young people. Although I have to say, because of social media, we are now getting in to some young people here who bother, you know? I mean, this young lady or father met me and said, you know, my daughter has switched to political science as her major. As a result of listening to you and so on. So maybe we are making a little bit of...
you planted some seeds.
But I would love to catch some of these young cricketers and teach them this cricket history, that they didn't fall from a coconut tree. They come from this history.
Exactly.
And I think, if these young people, understand what they mean to us as a region, I think they will do 10 times better on the cricket field. Saying that, I am getting worried for young Imlach because I'm loving. Clearly, he has learned from that tour.
Oh yes.
In Pakistan. And the reason I'm saying worried, because I'm just hoping some club don't come and call, and
no,
play T20.
Now he's style of batting.
All right. I hope so.
No.
I hope so.
I ain't think so.
Because it pleased my heart.
They want like your boy, the finishers.
Oh, that boy.
They're looking for the Imlachs of the world.
He come back. They come back from Dubai yet? The Dubai thing finish?
Yeah, his team got knocked out. The final, I think, was today. But he went over. He's meant goodbye. The man fly from Dubai. Not only he, Russell did the same thing. The man went straight over to Bangladesh and paid for the Bangladesh league.
Because I was saying somebody like a Rutherford.
Rutherford played in the final today.
Yeah, when Rutherford is finished, come home and play a couple.
I would hope if those guys could come home and make themselves available to play in the 4-day.
Yes.
Because both Rutherford and Hetmeyer are going to the IPL in March. So I think it would do them well to get some long format cricket under their belt, to get in some batting, but I doubt it. I highly doubt it.
Oh my goodness. Basil.
Yeah.
We could go on all night, my brother.
Yeah. A lot of our young people, and I a lot of times I don't blame them per se, because if you don't teach them, how they're gonna know? They're gonna just pick it up.
Right.
They're gonna pick it up just like so. And that's why I say it is important. And we talk about the schools. It would be great to have that history taught in the schools, because it's a very significant part of our Caribbean being, our West Indies cricket teams and cricket and so on and so forth, how it's so imbued in the culture. Maybe not as it used to be, but it was not as overtly as it used to be, but it is such a fundamental part of our Caribbean identity that I think is important for the young people to know, that when you walk onto a cricket field, no matter where you're playing, even if you're playing little bumper ball cricket, it is part of something of your Caribbean identity, that this thing put us as a Caribbean people on the world map, cricket. That's why, for example, the guys of my father's era are often seen even loftier than they really were as players, because of what they did in terms of the society, because they're the ones that really put West Indies cricket on the map in a significant way. Because here, as you would know this, you teach this, a lot of Caribbean nations just coming out, getting independent. So
yeah.
And the environment, and these guys went to England. I mean, we beat them in the 50s, but they went to England and put it on them, and then went back again and put it on them.
66,
so 66. So they were seen as giants, beating the colonial master at their own game in their backyard. That brought lifted the spirit of Caribbean people, and these youngsters need to understand how the mood of us as a people change with when the West Indies win versus when the West Indies lose. I mean, after moving away from Ghana, you're not so close to the situation. And I was home one year in the 90s in Christmas time, and West Indies lose a test match, and I come downtown Linden there, Market Square with them by his line, and I walking through there. All I hear people sucking the teeth and cussing, but the West Indies people face sour laugh, and it hit me. I said, "Boy, it's still there. It's still in there.
It's still there. It's still there. It's still there. It's still there.
Yes,
It
it's
is
still
not
there.
going away.
Yes.
I hear women. I like
Yes,
how we
that's
used to
what
call.
I'm
I hear
talking-
women going on bad. No.
That's what I'm talking about. Was doing most of the soft teeth and cussing is women, not men. You know?
And I wanted, Reginald, you take the word out of the mouth, and as you would say, great minds think alike. I wanted to ask Bassett because I'm concerned about
Sinclair. And you know, I'm glad Reginald thing, because I know Reginald personally. Reginald sent me a question, and I think I want us to discuss this, because it was a very, very, very pertinent question. He wanted us to discuss on the show, and I kept forgetting, and I'm glad he asked no. But Sinclair, Mr. Sinclair got to get himself in order. Oh, this was Reginald's question. I wonder if the analysis of the outstanding cricketer, Mr. Gilchrist's consideration was taken of the following. One, the quality of teams and batsmen during the playing days of our players. I guess this was something to do with Gilchrist talking about Boomerang.
Yeah.
About Boomerang heads and shoulders. The other quality bowlers competition with each other and sharing of bowling spells, the nature of pitches our bowlers had on to toil on, fielders' abilities to take catches off real pace bowlers, crowd support home and abroad, the fitness levels of our bowlers, workload in various competition leagues, instant cricket, and so on. You know, because you remember Adam Gilchrist made a statement about Boomerang being heads and shoulders above all other fast bowlers. And it was interesting. Somebody posted Boomerang's record next to Andy Roberts. Obviously, statistically, he had some metrics that was better than Andy Roberts, but it wasn't by no heads and shoulders. And now you would think Andy Roberts, for example, had to come in and toil in a West Indies team almost by himself.
Yes.
Because, you know, the bowlers on the other side were not nothing you would call pace. I mean, Van Bernhouden, all due respect, nothing, good player, Keith Boyce, Bernard Julian, but it wasn't like he had an opposite end. So they could look to block out Andy Roberts and take the chances against other and that's something that often happened to Roberts. And so a lot of times people might, you know, just judging a bowler on how many wickets they get is not always a true picture of how good that bowler is bowling. Because if you remember Colin Croft when he got 8 for 29, I remember listening on the radio to 50 years of West Indies cricket. I remember Croft saying he couldn't remember he bowled a bad ball in that bowling thing. But what was interesting, the Pakistani players said they were focused on Mr. Andy Roberts.
Roberts, yes.
And Croft bowling good at the other end, cleaned them up, right? So if Croft didn't have an Andy Roberts as a danger man, maybe he would not have been able to do the job he is. And all those things, and those are often things that are often forgotten about the greatness of Sir Andy Roberts. That, you know, he being the pioneer, and then maybe a couple of years down into his career, then he started to get the other guys coming in when they formed the four prong. But he had to shoulder the burden. And for a guy who was bowling at the pace he was bowling, at times I thought he had to bowl too many overs in an inning. I mean, a guy bowling 30-something overs. There's a lot of overs for genuine fast bowler. You know what I mean? Especially in conditions that are not as assistant. And look, he went on his first tour to India, got 30-odd wickets, and then went to Pakistan. The 2 tests he played there, he got 12 wickets.
But the other thing, Basil, is that when the quartet got going, them guys didn't get a chance to do 7-4 and 8-4 because the wickets would, you know, 3 a man, 4 a man. You know, so he didn't. None of them had the if Oldin or Garner or Roberts were playing like Bumrah,
Yes.
A cut above the ones in the team.
Close, yes.
Oh, they would have gotten far more wickets than they gotten. But you were part of a quartet of quality bowlers. By the time you bowl your first spell, you may be lucky to come back to get a second spell. So all those things, I agree with Reginald.
Mm-hmm.
I find a lot of the analysts today are very presentist
mm-hmm.
in their analysis,
mm-hmm.
and they don't look at the overall historical trajectory of the game.
And not only that, Adam Gilchrist is 40-something years old. I think he might be 50, right?
Yeah, just there, Bob.
Oh, there. He wouldn't have seen Andy Roberts. If he seen him, he was a little boy. If he saw him. Right? So he can't talk of no real intelligence about Andy Roberts as a fast bowler.
No.
You know, or Michael Holden or whatever. You know, he can't talk about them guys. Holden retired to
87.
almost 40 years ago.
Yeah,
Roberts over 40 years ago.
Yeah.
When they finished. And if you were 50 years old, baby Gilchrist, you a 10-year-old when these guys were finishing their career, right? So you know, they can't take. And one thing I know, Sir Randy has said to me, is that one thing Clive Lloyd did very well as captain. He divvied up that bowling amongst them. If you go back now and check the scoreboards, you know how the bowling was equitably distributed amongst the four.
That's the point.
You never really had one guy bowl 25 and the next one bowl 10. Never. The Clive Lloyd did an excellent job in preserving his troops and distributing the bowling nicely across the four prong.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Look at a Roger Harper.
Mm-hmm.
Had Roger Harper played in another era, he would have been one of the greats of the game.
Mm-hmm.
A great fielder,
Unfortunate for Roger. Unfortunate for Roger, T20 didn't come in.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
T20 and obviously white ball cricket fit his modus perfectly. That he would have been a superstar in them.
And his brains as a captain.
Yeah, well,
I mean, I always mourn. I said, my God, why Roger couldn't come a decade after? He would have been a bad man.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so therefore, when one analyzes the game, one has to take all those factors into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people who were in the Brian Lara era. Of course, everyone thinks that Brian Lara was God. Yeah. Understandably so, he dominated.
Yes.
but he is not a superlative batsman to a favor.
Well, I'm glad you just said. I am so happy you said that, Dr. Hinds. One day, several years ago, when my good friend Lennox Cush used to be playing cricket in the States, I get a call from a mutual friend, and Cush was on the line with him. And apparently, he was telling Cush about Viv. Well, Cush just turned 50 the other day. Cush didn't know about Viv. For Cush generation, Larry is the king. No, nobody else. Lara. Don't tell them guy, but nobody. But Viv. Viv is a name they hear about. They must catch Viv as a little boy and they see Viv. So Mark called me, said, Butchman, you attack the Cushy. But I said, Cush, Lara is a bad man, and Lara is me batsman. But let me tell you, Viv is a bad man. Here I tell you something. Don't let the records thing with Viv. Because I remember my father even saying to me, he feels Viv should have averaged 70 something.
Yeah,
right? But Viv never played for that. Viv played cricket to win. He did whatever he had to do to win. And then second, entertain. Right? So when at the end of the career, you look at the records and let it chips forward to me as far as he's concerned. Right? But Viv, my Lord, I hear Ian Chappell, who would have a good who have an educated opinion on this. made a statement about, in his view, the 3 best West Indian batsmen he has seen or played against, and in this order: Sobers 1, Viv 2, Lara 3. I would agree with. I would
no, I can live with that.
I would tend to agree with Ian Chappell on that. I tend to agree with Ian Chappell on that.
And Ian Chappell is a sharpshooter, you know.
Yeah. He played against both Viv and Sobers. Played with Sobers in South Australia, and he's seen Lara's whole career. And he's a keen. He knows the game. He's a very keen understanding of the game. So that I thought that I agreed with that analysis. And look, Imran, just I that's a conversation. I know, of course, you remember, but I pointed out to Coach in the conversation. It was me and a mutual friend, and I said Imran Khan, and I had this article, and I don't know what happened to it. Imran Khan wrote an article about Viv in Packer cricket, and he set the stage. He talked about all the great batsmen that were in Packer cricket: Barry Richards, Greg Chappell, Gordon Greenidge, and you go to Javid Miandad, and he categorized them. He talked about Miandad, Gavaskar, and those kind of batters were run accumulators. Barry Richards and Greg Chappell, Gordon Greenidge, orthodox stroke players of the highest ilk. And he said Packer cricket was the first time all the great fast bowlers in the world were assembled in one place. And he said one person, for the most part, dominated, where the rest survived. Obviously, I know Barry Richards had some great innings and so on in that Packer thing. Was Viv Richards, right? And those 2 years of Packer cricket, unfortunately, never counted in Viv's or none of the players' first class or whatever statistics. But Viv was outstanding. That was when he was at the peak of his powers. And I wish they had official test cricket that he could have played during that time. What he would have done to their bowling if he had gotten a chance. I remember we played the 2 games, and then they get thrown out the team in 78, and then they weren't able to go to India in 79, the Kaitran team. When they had told Packer, they told Mr. Packer, we will not miss official West Indies cricket. So Packer actually rescheduled the season to facilitate the West Indies team going to India, and then they would play the season after they come back from India. And if you remember, Dr. Hinds, remember they came to the Caribbean with the super tests. Yes, that's what they end up doing. So when the West Indies board, that's why when people try to put them in the same category like these guys who ran off to the IPL and make themselves unavailable to play with, and say, well, Clive Lloyd and Richards and all the others. I said, no. Those guys never missed official cricket for money, right? Get your facts straight. They never did. And I said that situation was nothing to do with money. That was a selection dispute, right? It's nothing to do with money. And the West Indies board was wrong on all counts.
Yes. Basil Butcher, young Butcher, here tonight. Dr. Adams was out partying last night in the snow in New York.
We had some snow. Well, I saw New York, and usually we in Jersey just get more snow, but we ain't get nothing close to that. We must get a little 2 inches. I saw video of people in New York, in New York with the snow. I said, well, they look like they got about somewhere between 3 and 6.
Yeah. I don't even know if Doc made it out to New York because he was supposed to travel back, but I don't know if the snow permitted them to travel. But
no. Well, today no snow and fall, and I think everything would have been cleared out.
They fix up the thing. Okay. Yeah. I far away from the snow by here.
Oh yeah, well yeah, you in Arizona, you snow. You gotta go to Flagstaff.
I gotta go to Flagstaff to see snow.
See some snow. I had a colleague that lived in Flagstaff, I'm telling me, but so I said, wait, y'all get snow now. He said, yeah, man, Flagstaff. That thing get cold in the winter out here, bro. I said, what?
But thank you very
All
much,
right.
brother, and I'll see you next week.
Yes, sir.
And
Yes, sir.
hopefully, Dr. Adams makes it back in one piece
Yes,
to
sir. Yes, sir.
Tennessee.
Safe travels to Vincent.
Right, and I'll
All
see
right,
you
man.
And to you, the audience, always a pleasure to do this. Of course, you know, cricket is not out there as a game. It's part of our heritage, part of who we are, part of our identity. So it's all politics and sports, all wrapped in one. Bill Crumb used to say, good things come wrapped in small packages. Well, you know, here we are. I'll see you all next week. And for those of you who are all-rounders, we will be on during the week with Politics 101.
Rude boys gonna get you by degrees. Here comes the West Indies. And when you're facing the generals, nearly every ball is a funeral. And when we batting, brother, go and put your men on the boundary line. And if you give we a liquor, that is merely a hiccup. Look, you win the little battle, you lose the war. It's the same result every time. Everybody sing. Here comes the West Indies. Here comes the West Indies. Them rude boys gonna get you by degrees. Here comes the West Indies. I'll tell you now. Here comes the West Indies. Here comes the West Indies. Them bad boys gonna bring you to your knees. Here comes the West Indies. Special request to the Trinity posse. And what about the Guyana posse? And what about